Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to Nitya Nritya 2025, the landmark conference and dance festival in classical dance, proudly presented by Nupura School of Bharatanatyam, founded by Guru Dr. Lalita Srinivasan. A warm welcome again to all of you, renowned artists, dancers, gurus from all over the city to have graced this occasion. At this year's Nitya Nritya, we would like to pay tribute and fondly remember two towering personalities who were an integral part of Nupura's journey. We dedicate this edition of Nitya Nritya to the late Dr. Vimala Rangachar and our beloved Shri Srinivasan, two individuals whose contributions went far beyond roles and responsibilities. We now have an invocation dance by Kumari Snigdha Surdeep, who is the granddaughter of Guru Dr. Lalita Srinivasan and Shri Srinivasan. I would like to invite Mahi to introduce Snigdha.
Snigdha Srinivasan Surdeep began learning Bharatanatyam at the tender age of 7 and is the disciple and granddaughter of Guru Dr. Lalita Srinivasan. She has performed on several platforms with the Nupura ensemble and has been the lead dancer in many school productions. After 9 years of dedicated training, she plans to present her Rangapravesha next year. Alongside dance, Snigdha also is passionate about music, Western dance, sketching and painting. A talented and well-rounded student, she has excelled in the Gandharva Bharatanatyam exams and Trinity piano and drum exams, and is currently pursuing her first PU at Mount Carmel College. Snigdha Surdeep will now present a Shiva Sthiti taken from the Yoga Tantra set in Raga Malike. This piece beautifully describes Lord Shiva's awe-inspiring form of divine attributes. This shloka is followed by a tilana written specially for Nitya Nritya, the Lord of Dance, in Raga Malike and Tala Malika. The lyrics are composed by Dr. Lalita Srinivasan and set to music by the late Shri H.K. Narayana. Snigdha offers this performance as a Shraddhanjali to her grandfather, Shri Srinivasan, while invoking the blessings of Nitya Nritya, Lord Nataraja, for all the dance offerings in this festival.
तस्मै गणेशाय यत्कण्ठः पुष्करायते मदाभोग घनद्वानो नीलकण्ठस्य ताण्डवे त्रिनेत्रं चतुर्भुजं शान्तं रक्तवर्णं स्मिताननं पदपत्रं च पुष्पकम् गंगा चंद्र समायुक्तम् अपस्मारपरिचितम् दक्षिण कुञ्चितपदं वाम पादं च समुद्धृतं सव्यं तु शूलमादाय अन्ये ढमरुकौ तदा वामहस्ते तु डोलाकम् इतरे अग्निपात्रकौ वामकर्णे इंदुपत्रं च इतरे नक्रकुण्डलं अभये फणिसंयुक्तं सर्वाङ्गे भस्मधारिणम् एवं नटेशमत्यन्त ध्यान मन्त्रेण पूजयेत् ध्यान मन्त्रेण पूजयेत् ध्यान मन्त्रेण पूजयेत्
शिवं नित्य नृत्यं ताण्डव प्रवीणं कुञ्चितपादं नर्तितं नूपुर झण झण शिवं नित्य
चैतन्यं सकलक्रियाकारिणं षट्कोणसंस्थितं प्रणवाकारसुन्दरं वरं ज्योतिस्वरूपम् प्रकृति चैतन्यं सकलक्रियाकारिणं षट्कोणसंस्थितं प्रणवाकारसुन्दरं वरं ज्योतिस्वरूपम् शिवं नित्यनृत्यं ताण्डवप्रवीणं शिवं नित्यनृत्यं ताण्डवप्रवीणं शिवं नित्यनृत्यं काचनुदति विटत जडुदतो
Thank you, Snikta, for that wonderful Shraddhanjali. We now continue our Shraddhanjali program, convened by Srimati Jyothi Raghuram, with a segment featuring some wonderful speakers who have shared close associations with both Srimati Vimala Rangachar and Shri D. Srinivasan. I would like to take a moment to introduce our guest speakers and invite them onto the dais. Please join me in welcoming Srimati Jyothi Raghuram. Srimati Jyothi Raghuram is a prominent journalist, art critic, and trained Bharatanatyam dancer based in Bangalore. With over 2 decades of experience in print and electronic media, she has contributed insightful reviews, essays, and commentaries on the performing and visual arts. Her deep understanding of classical traditions and contemporary perspectives makes her a distinguished voice in the Indian art scene. Next, I would like to welcome Dr. V.K. Aatre to the stage, please. Dr. V.K. Aatre is a Padma Vibhushan awardee and is a distinguished scientist and former Director General of DRDO. A pioneer in electronics and radar technology, he has greatly contributed to India's defense research. As president of Nupura, he also brings his deep appreciation for art and culture, embodying a rare blend of scientific intelligence and artistic sensibility. Please welcome him with a round of applause, please. Next, I would like to invite Shri H.N. Suresh to the dais. H.N. Suresh is the director of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Bangalore, and a respected cultural leader deeply involved in nurturing the city's artistic and educational landscape. A close associate of Srimati Vimala Rangachar and Shri D. Srinivasan, he has worked alongside them in furthering the Bhavan's vision of promoting Indian art and heritage. I would next like to invite Dr. B.V. Rajaram to the stage, please. Please welcome him with a round of applause. Dr. B.V. Rajaram is a well-known theatre personality, scholar, and administrator who has made significant contributions to Karnataka's cultural life. A former director of Rangayana Mysuru, he has been deeply involved in theatre, training, direction, and arts management. Dr. Rajaram has been a steadfast supporter of initiatives that celebrate and sustain the performing arts. Next, please join me in welcoming Srimati Madhu Nataraj to the dais, please. Madhu Nataraj is an acclaimed dancer, choreographer, and the director of the Natya Institute of Kathak and Choreography, as well as the founder of the Performing Wing STEM Dance Company. Trained in Kathak under her mother and guru Dr. Maya Rao, she is celebrated for her innovative approach that bridges classical and contemporary dance. As the head of MES Kalavedi, Madhu continues to promote arts and culture, carrying forward a rich artistic legacy with creativity, grace, and vision. Next, please join me in welcoming our dear Guru, Dr. Lalita Srinivasan, to the dais. It is now my pleasure to hand over the proceedings to Srimati Jyothi Raghuram.
Good evening, everybody. Today is a very special day for Nupura and all the art lovers of Bangalore. It is the 40th edition of Nitya Nritya. And a few words about Nupura and Nitya Nritya. Nupura is almost 5 decades old. In Bangalore today, at least, there's a mushrooming of not just dance classes, but gurus also. Every street corner has got a guru and a Bharatanatyam class in Bangalore. So to be relevant and to be in circulation, everybody is trying out something new. But Nupura has never had this problem simply because of Lalita Srinivasan. She is an alumni of Keshav Nritya Shala, and she has had an enlightened upbringing at home. So whether it was Sanskritam, lyrics, Kannada literature, Carnatic music, everything was there with her, which was only encouraged by Guru H.R. Keshamurthy, from where she has passed out from. So it was not it was not surprising that her thirst for knowledge led her to Venkat Lakshamma. In fact, I would not be wrong in saying at all that she is singularly responsible for the Mysore school of Bharatanatyam, as we call it, having assumed any kind of identity in the initial years. I'm talking about more than 40, 50 years ago. And today it has stood the test of time, and it is a style in itself. We don't have to look beyond the borders of Karnataka to say that we have a beautiful Bharatanatyam form and style, which we can very proudly call her our own. And she's as much of a researcher. Nothing much more, there's plenty to say. But Nitya Nritya itself, my memories go back to the early 80s when this was started. In those days, there was no communication, was not there. Like at our fingertips, we have the digital age now. We can talk to anybody, do anything. Avagala ಒಂದು train booking ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕಷ್ಟ, ಒಂದು phone call ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ trunk call. So I don't know how they did it, but it was a week-long festival of dance and music. Manu was in fact recollecting that Belige they used to have seminars, discussions, workshops, lecture demonstrations, and Mangalavadhyada jote even the audiences were invited into the auditorium. Onthara tumba sambrama vijrambane. Till date, I have been following dance for at least 25, 30 years now, very seriously, but I have never seen a dance festival like Nitya Nritya. It brought Bangalore on to the center stage as a cultural center. A lot of local artists were encouraged, cross-border. In fact, Nitya Nritya was one of the pioneers in also getting dancers from the Northeast. Northeast, and we always still recently used to think it's another land altogether. But we have Manipuri dance. All those things came to Bangalore thanks only to Nitya Nritya. So today we begin Nitya Nritya, the 40th. This is the first time we don't have Mr. Srinivasan with us. There's a vacuum in all our hearts who knew him, yet there is a little bit of him in all our hearts. I'll tell you why, the reason for it. And Vimala Rangachar also. Let me talk about Vimala Rangachar first because she was senior. She was one person who did a lot to the entire cultural scene, whether it's textiles, handlooms, handicrafts, dance, music, theatre, literature, everything. Kalavedi, MES set of institutions, Crafts Council of Karnataka, they were all her babies which are still thriving today. And she along with Srinivasan, Lalita and Suresh, they were among the organizing committees, the original first organizing committees of Nitya Nritya, where people like Ra Satyanarayana, H.K. Rangnath were all very involved. They're all very big names in the literary and dance circles and art circles. So that is the legacy that Nitya Nritya carries with it to today, because those were the stalwarts who pitched in so much. And Vimala Rangachar also was one among the organizing committee. And for her, she had made a very meaningful contribution to the art scene. Her daughter Revati and her niece Asha, who are now settled in the US, they were known as Deepa Lakshmis. In fact, Vimala Rangachar also is responsible for dance getting that kind of a respectability and status in Karnataka, which it didn't have till then, because somebody of her stature was able to bring her, Asha was as good as her daughter, bring them onto the stage, was itself got respectively, which so many of us, including me, took to dance probably in the 70s as early as that. So she was responsible for that too. And we have actually living legends amongst us, whether it's Aatre, Suresh or Rajaram, Lalita. Madhu is in the making, she's still young, her body of work still needs to be done. But so the first of the speakers, Srinivasan, of course. DS was one of those backstage persons. He was a very active Lions Club member. He was not camera shy, he was not stage shy, but he was so happy doing so much backstage. He was the backbone of the organization of Nupura and Nitya Nritya. Many times Lalita has said, but for him, I wouldn't have been where I am in dance today. And he was one who used to organize everything, the entire logistics. And he would come on stage maybe to hand over a shawl to Lalita or maybe a mic or something like that, but never seen outside. When I think of Srinivasan, which I'm sure many of the students of Nupura and those who knew him, not just intimately, even in a breezy encounter with him, is the kind, he was an ebullient person, full of life. Absolutely, never say die kind of an attitude. which is so rare and genuinely affectionate. What he has done to Nupura is again the legacy that Nupura, these are legacies which are the foundation stones of an organization, so it can never go astray or wrong. This is what, and many of us students who are Nupura who are there will always remember him as somebody who was warm, affectionate, fun-loving. I have a 30-year-old son. He was my son's friend. I'm 60 plus, he was my friend. People who are older than me, he was also their friend. So that was the kind of personality he had. A very low-profile person who's done so much to the art scene that we don't even know what the contribution is through Nupura itself. Now I would like to call upon the first speaker of today. Dr. Aatre is a renowned scientist. And when I look at Lalita, as a teenager, I used to think she's so pretty, she's so well-dressed, she's so well-groomed. This sentence has gotten, there is a reason why I'm saying it. Dr. Aatre and Srinivasan were college mates in engineering. So Srinivasan used to land up at Atre's house, and the landing becomes more and more frequent. If Lalita looks like this now, can you imagine what she looked at 17 or 18? And that's how their marriage happened. So I'm sure he will, Dr. Aatre will have, and one thing about Dr. Aatre is, he is deeply interested in music and Indian literature. By deeply interested, I don't mean somebody who just sits and listens to music or reads something. He's been a mentor for Nupura, the backbone again for Nupura, and very knowledgeable person with equal stance with his scientific temper and knowledge. I invite him to speak a few words about Srinivasan.
Good evening. I first met Srinivasan in July 1957, when both of us entered the portals of University College of Engineering to pursue our studies. It so happened that both of us were allotted to the same section, and we decided to occupy the last bench in the class. Somehow or the other, very soon we became good friends. The main attraction being both of us, and among the group we had, all of us were could be called as bookworms, especially reading English fiction. In those days, the detective stories was called Sexton Blake short stories. It used to be 60, 64 pages books, and we used to buy and rotate, and sometimes we used to tear the book into half and each one reads different parts of the book and so on. That was the day when most engineering students had to do survey. And the survey field work used to take us deep into Kapan Park. Of course, the intellectual load or curriculum load of survey was quite small, and we used to sneak off to have a coffee in a parade cafe sometimes, or sometimes even cut the classes and rush off to Kempegowda Road to see Hindi movies. There were plenty of room, and Srinivasan somehow had an influence on most of the theatres, and Alankar used to be our favorite theatre to cut the class and go and watch movies. Srinivasan was more popular because of the fantastic cycle he used to bring. He has a bicycle with a red mudguard. Nobody had seen such a colorful bicycle, and that used to be the central piece of that part. Among the group we had, Srinivasan was the one who seemed to give an impression that he was comparatively affluent. The reason is whenever we used to go and have a cup of coffee, he used to order 2 dosas. And it got repeated so many times, finally we decided to expand his D. Srinivasan as Dosa Srinivasan. In the second year of our engineering, we had to go for a survey camp. We used to go to a place called Ghati Subramania, which some of you may know. It's about 30, 40 miles from Bangalore. And once our survey was over, it's like a 9 to 5 class. After 5 o'clock, we used to all be free. And we are nearly 200 students. And the evenings became a cards group. We had a number of cards group, and we used to play the rummy for a very small stakes. And used to down tumblers and tumblers. Then there was no glasses. It always used to be tumblers of tea. And all through the night till 10 o'clock. We even tried our hill climbing techniques in a hill which is called Makali Durga, which is very near Ghati Subramania, but we had to give up because Makali Durga was infested with snakes. This card game which started in Ghati Subramania continued, and we often used to end up in Srinivasan's house on the 12th cross, Malleshwaram, where the supply of tea was restricted, but still Swami, he was housekeeper. We used to do other, we became very friendly with Swami. So friendly that even when Srinivasan was not there, he used to open the doors for us to go and play cards in his house. At the end of the second year, Srinivasan decided to take up civil engineering while I went to electrical engineering. Our daytime contact was becoming less and less. Srinivasan was a brilliant organizer. And whenever the students had to have a function or have a group or a party, the man who was to be called upon to do the job was Dosa Srinivasan. Nobody used to call him D. Srinivasan, it just called Dosa Srinivasan. In fact, in the final year when we had an educational trip, I was the secretary for the electrical group, and Srinivasan was the secretary for the civil engineering group. And Srinivasan's father then was the chief transport superintendent of Indian Railways. And through his influence, we were able to get 2 bogies for ourselves to travel in the train. And we traveled all over India with the train at unbelievable concern rate. Again, thanks to Mr. Deshkachar, Srinivasan's father, and we had a wonderful time. But as we became little more serious about studies in the third and final year, the small cliques used to get formed. And Srinivas, myself, and there was one Rangachar who later on became the Vice Chancellor of Roorkee University. It used to be a very small congregate group. We used to sit down and discuss what would be the future hold for us. What are we going to become? Srinivasan always used to express that he wanted to go to private business. Somehow myself and Rangaraju felt that Srinivasan was not cut for a private business. For the simple reason, though he was so well organized, he used to be rather chaotic about his financial dealings. And somehow he believed that everybody was as much of a democrat as he was and as open as he was. And we somehow felt that he is going to be a gullible person and should not get into a private industry. So we used to advise him to take up a job which I am sure he was going to shine. And it became a prophecy. So when he became, later on, when they started Karuna Associates and others, he got into a lot of financial deals which he couldn't sustain and clearly had a fair amount of financial problems down the road. Now that we are so busy with our education, Srinivasan's, myself and Srinivasan, Rangachar, and one other gentleman who I will shortly name, Meeting became less and less, and evenings used to be the time when we used to meet. And almost every evening, Srinivasan used to come on his motorcycle. He had a car, a motorcycle, and thing. I must tell a story about his car. In the second year, after second year, he stopped bringing his red bicycle to the car and decided to bring his car, Morris Minor, always filled with gas. We had an ingenious method of stealing his key and take away his car for a ride in Bengaluru anywhere we wanted, not bothering to fill up the gas that we had used. In fact, once, when there was some problem in the college was closed, and Srinivasan went away to his favorite sports and playing tennis with Syed Asif Qadri, was the university champion and other things. We stole his car. Not stole, took away his car and went away to Shivasamudram to visit Barchuki Falls. Gas was full, car was free, so we had nothing, no problem. When we came back in the evening, he was hopping mad, but the four of us could be outshout him. And he had no choice but to again next morning fill up the gas and bring the car back to the college so that the others like me can steal his car and go away somewhere else. I said as our day meeting became less and less, Srinivasan used to come to my house every evening at 8 o'clock on his scooter. He used to park it in front of my house in Kumara Park and used to call me. And there was another friend which was Nitya Nritya, who was going very close, and we three of us used to walk up to Swastik Circle to have a cup of coffee and come back. Soon I noticed that Srinivasan's idea of coming to my house in the evening was not because of friendship. He was always wondering whether he could take a peek at Lalita, my younger sister, with whom he got married in 1962. But when we graduated in 1961, Srinivasan decided to look at few jobs and then came back to engineering college to do his master's in structural design. And I went away to Indian Institute of Science to pursue my higher studies. Even then, we used to meet quite often. Somehow Srinivasan used to confide with me and Rangachar everything he used to do. I would say I was his advisor or anything, but everything, his studies and other friendship, always used to have a discussion with me, and I became in some sort of a way a philosopher for the Srinivasan. In 1964, I went away abroad to the other side of Atlantic and stayed there for nearly 20 years. So our meeting had become less and less. But I was, in some sense, constantly in touch with Srinivasan and Lalita whenever I came back. And in 1980, I came back to India to work for DRDO and became much, much busier and hardly had any time for anybody else. That was the time when Srinivasan got involved in Nupura. I personally feel among the pillars of Nupura, Srinivasan was the dominant pillar. Though immensely talented that she was, Lalita's career in dancing would not have reached the pinnacle it has without Srinivasan's support. It was not a passive support. It was kind of an active support. I often wondered if Lalita had married somebody else other than Srinivasan, would she have been able to achieve this in spite of all the talents? Srinivasan's had slowly he used to talk about it and what he used to do. And in those days, whenever Nupura had a program outside Bengaluru or inside Bangalore, somehow or the other, coincidentally, I used to be there in almost all the programs. And some or the other, so I came to know about Nupura students and everything else. So as soon as I retired and came back, the first thing Srinivasan asked me to do was to become the president of Nupura. I noticed a few interesting things. Other than the fact, entire organization of Nupura, Nitya Nritya, providing the all kinds of support, logistic support, was completely up to Srinivasan was one thing, while the choreography and dance portion was left to Lalita. One other thing which must be remembered by most of you is Srinivasan treated all the senior students of Nupura like he used to treat Manu. He always felt they were all something like his daughters. And in reciprocity, I have noticed all the senior students, Srinivasan Mama was the ultimate for affection and love. This is a feature which I could observe every time when we had a Nupura function. As I said, Srinivasan was a brilliant organizer, but not a good manager. During the Nupura meetings, we used to have a fair amount of disagreements on many issues, especially how to raise funds for Nupura, how to sustain Nupura, how to form a corpus fund for Nupura. And Srinivasan always used to be, as far as his personal finance was concerned, was rather chaotic in some sense. But Nupura wouldn't be what it is today, but for Srinivasan. There were times when we used to have a very serious arguments and so on, yet Nupura, as most of you identify Nupura with Lalita, you must identify Nupura with D. Srinivasan also. Of course, by this time we had graduated from Dosa, and every time we used to meet, he was a great fan of Black Label whiskey, and in spite of when I used to offer him other drinks, he always preferred Black Label whiskey and everything. As the years passed by, his health started deteriorating. I feel that he did not invest enough to keep healthy. He was as careless about his health as he was with his money. I have known instances in engineering college that there were lots of poor students. Srinivasan used to, without flinching, used to give them money and loan and never bothered to remember to whom he gave or how much he gave. This became in some respect a synchron of his whole operation. As his health deteriorated, he was younger than I am by an year actually. I used to sometimes wonder why he has not bothered to apply the same principles which he adopted for organizing and managing other things. In fact, in managing is something was interesting. When I came back, I decided to have a 50th year get-together of all the 1957 batch students and formed a song committee. And the first man we went to was Srinivasan to look at all the logistics. We located nearly 200 of our people from all over the world, US, even in Australia, Europe, and brought majority of them for a 2-day bash in Bengaluru to celebrate the year. And the captain of the ship at that time was Srinivasan. Just a few months back, when I decided to travel to US to spend some time with my children and grandchildren, I went to his house before I left for US. He came back, he came from his room and sat there and, oh, Dr. Vasudev Aatre. I still remember the ringing voice. And we had started, and in fact, when I left, myself and my wife Kanti felt that he was in a much better shape than he was several months back. What a shock it was when I landed 48 hours later in Atlanta airport. And as soon as I cleared the customs and came out, the first thing my daughter told me was that Srinivasan was no more. I couldn't say I disbelieved it. For once I thought, in some sense, he had suffered enough. Srinivasan was a great friend. Very pleasant. Though he had a shrill voice and occasionally used to shout, I have never seen him operate with any rancor. I have never heard him over the last 60 and odd years ever badmouth any of his friends. Some of whom were really very unfair to him and did a lot of damage to him. A character which most of us do not possess. Among the 10 or 12 people who occupied the last bench in UVCE, only 5 of us are alive. The rest of all have passed away. May their souls rest in peace. In my opinion, the best way to remember Srinivasan, especially for the younger generation of Nupura, is to see how Nupura can sustain, survive, and excel when the founders of Nupura are no longer there. That is my wish, and that is my hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aatre. Now we call Mr. H.N. Suresh, Director, Bharati Vidya Bhavan, to say a few words. He's been on the cultural scene. He's a writer, he's an author, he's an editor, he's an anchor, he's a painter, and he's everything that you can think of on the cultural scene, who's been there for more than 4 decades in public life, and perhaps one of the most unassuming public figures too.
ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಜ್ಯೋತಿ ರಂಗನಾಥ್ ಆಗಲೇ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ ಮೇಲೆ, ವಿ.ಕೆ. ಆತ್ರೆ ಅವರು ಮಾತಾಡಿದ ಮೇಲೆ, good that this child is now telling me to restrict my talk for 2 minutes. Well, good. Because I'm quite conscious of the fact still there are 3 more speakers to go through and we have a big dance recital to follow. Well, people in the auditorium, off the auditorium, they always know about Srinivas. I don't have to go too much deeper into it. ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ್ ಅಂಕಲ್ ಅಂತಲೇ ಗೊತ್ತಿರೋದು ನೂಪುರದ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ನಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ಈಸ್ ಎ ಮಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಆಫ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸರ್. ಎಷ್ಟು ಪಿನ್ ಟು ಪಿನ್ accuracy. ಎಷ್ಟು accuracy ಅಂದರೆ without his knowledge he has created certain records which you don't know also. Nitya Nritya some years back, when it's beginning years and little later, we used to get the reviews very next day in the morning papers. Evening program ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ದಂಗೆ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ರಿವ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡೋದು. The person responsible for 2 people. One is Chandru, another is Srinivas. They used to manage in such a way. Performance ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ದಂಗೆ ಚಂದ್ರು used to be picked up, ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಊಟ ಕೊಡಿಸಿ ಸೀದಾ ಪ್ರೆಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ಬಿಟ್ಟು, ಪ್ರೆಸ್ಸಿಂದ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮನೆಗೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಅವ್ರು ಬರೆದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಫೈಲ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ he used to be dropped at home. This was happening so regularly. And morning the artists were so keen to write what Chandru has said. See, that's the kind of thing, and still that record nobody has broken. that is still there. Certain records, I have given only one example. There are many examples like that. And Srinivasan, in his professional life, I'll only touch few things. He was concentrating how a middle income group can get a flat in Bangalore. It was a dream come true issue. There are some paper reports collected with that. He started a big institution called the Scopa. There, the people who build the apartments, they come together and started a compodium. And they used to discuss common issues. He didn't know that he was creating an institution which will go on an all-India basis sometime later. See, that is the professional people look at him as a person who was a big dreamer. He thought beyond just a builder of apartments in Malaysia. That was his capacity. He was responsible for many big things, even for Nupura. Whatever Lalita wanted to do, whichever the artists, they used to come and perform here. But what he has done indirectly, for the whole dance community of the state, he was the person, name any artist, they performed in Nitya Nritya. I don't have to go into names, whether it's a contemporary people or the deep classical people, they all perform. And morning lecture demonstration, there used to be a regular schedule which people look forward, and it's in big numbers. And people who are experienced, that some of them are in this auditorium. Well, I take Jyothi's question. I think time up. Of course, I had to not to forget mention Vimala auntie. We did work together in many projects, and she had one good thing. She knows whom to, what work to be get it done by which person. She was quite accurate in her, understanding, and she used to get the work done. That is, she built the institution. She made MAS College to grow, and I am glad Yashaji is here, continuing the work of the Kalavedi, which has, even the auditorium is named after her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to take much of time. Still, on Vimala's life, we have two more people on the dais. Rajaram is going to speak to her, and Madam is going to speak about it. And with these few words, namaskar.
Kannada theatre in the 70s was at its peak, the golden era of Kannada theatre. 80s also was a good time. After that, there was a downturn. Many stalwarts at that time fell by the wayside. They have not been able to get up. One individual became an institution, that is Dr. B.V. Rajaram. From then to now, he's in circulation. He's got a doctorate in Natya Shastra, incidentally. Yes. And even today, Rajaram ಅವರು ನಾಟಕ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಥವಾ ಅದರೊಳಗೆ ಪಾತ್ರ ತಗೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, he's got a dedicated audience coming to him. That should tell you everything about him. He will say a few words about Vimala Rangachar, with whom he had a very close association, as she was also a theatre person.
ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ವೇದಿಕೆ ಮೇಲಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲ ಗಣ್ಯರೇ ಮತ್ತು ಸಭಾಸದರೇ, ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಅವರನ್ನು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನ ಜನ, ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಮಲ್ಲೇಶ್ವರದ ಜನ ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ನೆನೆಸ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಅಷ್ಟು ಅದ್ಭುತವಾದ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ರಂಗಭೂಮಿಗೆ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅವರು. ನೀವು ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಹೆಸರು ಹೇಳಿ, ಅದರ ಮೂಲದಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಭಾಳ ಅದ್ಭುತವಾದ ಕೆಲಸ ಅಂದರೆ ADA, ಅಮೆಚರ್ ಡ್ರಾಮಾಟಿಕ್ ಅಸೋಸಿಯೇಷನ್ ಏನಿತ್ತು, ಅದು ನಮ್ಮ SG ರಾಮಚಂದ್ರ ಅವರು ಮತ್ತು ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಸೇರಿ, ಅದು ಒಂದು ವೇಸ್ಟ್ ಜಾಗ ಇತ್ತು. ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದು ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಅದೇನೋ ಆಗುತ್ತೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ನೋ ಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಅದನ್ನು ಸೇರಿಕೊಂಡು ಅದ್ಭುತವಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ಆಡಿಟೋರಿಯಂ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಯಿತು. ಅವತ್ತಿನಿಂದ ಇವತ್ತಿನವರೆಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಅಮೆಚರ್ ಡ್ರಾಮಾಟಿಕ್ ಅಸೋಸಿಯೇಷನ್ ಅದು 100ನೇ ವರ್ಷವನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಅವರು ನಿಂತು ಅದ್ಭುತವಾಗಿ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಯಿತು. ಅದು ಒಂದು. ಮತ್ತು ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಸೇವಾ ಸದನ. ಸೇವಾ ಸದನ ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು ಬಹಳ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸೇವೆನೇ ಅದು ಅವ್ರು ಮಾಡಿರೋದು. ನಾನು ಅನೇಕ ಸಲ ಅವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸಮಾರಂಭಗಳಿಗೆ ಹೋದಾಗ ಅಥವಾ ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂತ ಹೋದಾಗ ಅಲ್ಲಿಯ ಸೇವಾ ಸದನದ ಇನ್ಮೇಟ್ಸ್ಗಳು ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ದು ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ತಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯನೇ ಆಗಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಾಗೆ ಆ ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳನ್ನು ಕರೆಸಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಓದಿಸುಗಳನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಅವರಿಗೆ ಏನೇನು ಬೇಕೋ ಅದೆಲ್ಲವನ್ನು ಸಹಾಯ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಅವರ ಮದುವೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿ ಅವರ ಬಾಣಂತನವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ಅದು. ನನಗೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯನೇ ಆಗಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಒಬ್ಬರು ಬಂದು ಇನ್ಮೇಟ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು ಈ ಥರ ಎಲ್ಲ ಆಯಿತು ನನಗೆ ಅಂತ. ಶಿ ವಾಸ್ ಕ್ರೈಮ್. ಅಂದರೆ ಒಂದು ಹೆಣ್ಣಿನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇದ್ದಂಥ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರೀತಿ ಬಹಳ ಅದ್ಭುತವಾಗಿತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಕ್ರಾಫ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಕೌನ್ಸಿಲು ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡದು. ನಮ್ಮ ಸಂಗೀತ ನಾಟಕ ಅಕಾಡೆಮಿ ಆಗ್ಬೋದು, NSD ಆಗ್ಬೋದು, ಇವನ್ನೆಲ್ಲವರು ಮಾಡಿದಂಥವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಕಮಲಾದೇವಿ ಚಟ್ಟೋಪಾಧ್ಯಾಯ ಅವರು. ಅವರ ಜೊತೆ ನಿಕಟ ಸಂಪರ್ಕ ಇತ್ತು ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ. ಮತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ನಾಡಿನ ದೊಡ್ಡ ರಂಗಭೂಮಿಯ ಒಂದು ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಅಂದರೆ ಶ್ರೀರಂಗರು ಇದ್ದದ್ದು ಮಲ್ಲೇಶ್ವರಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು. ಶ್ರೀರಂಗರು ಮತ್ತು ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಅವರು ಸೇರಿಕೊಂಡು ನಾಟ್ಯ ಸಂಘ ಥಿಯೇಟರ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಒಂದು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಅದ್ರ ಮೂಲಕವಾಗಿ ಕಮಲಾದೇವಿ ಚಟ್ಟೋಪಾಧ್ಯಾಯ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಕರೆಸುವಂಥದ್ದು ಮತ್ತು ಅದರ ಮೂಲಕ BV ಕಾರಂತರು ಬಂದು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ರಂಗಭೂಮಿಯ ಚಟುವಟಿಕೆಗಳನ್ನು ವರ್ಕ್ಶಾಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು. ಹೀಗೆ ಅನೇಕ ಕೆಲಸಗಳಿಗೆ ಮೊದಲು ನಿಂತವರು ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಅವರು. ಅವರಿಗೆ ಡ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್ ಇಷ್ಟ ಆಯ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಆದರೆ ಅವ್ರ ಅಮ್ಮ ಡ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್ ಕಲಿಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು. ಇವರಿಗೆ ನಾಟಕ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಇಷ್ಟ, ಆದರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾರೂ ಸಪೋರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೆ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅವರು ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಅವರು ಬಂದ ಮೇಲೆ ಅನೇಕ ನಾಟಕಗಳನ್ನು ಅವರು ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಯಿತು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿ ಕೈಲಾಸಮ್ಮ ಅವರ ಅಮ್ಮ ಅವ್ರ ಗಂಡ ಭಾಳ, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಅಮ್ಮ ಅವ್ರ ಗಂಡ ಅನ್ನುವ ಅಮ್ಮ ಅನ್ನೋದೇ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪಾತ್ರ. ದಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್. ಅವ್ರು ಹಾಗೇ ಇದ್ದರು, ಒಂದು ವೆಲ್ ಡ್ರೆಸ್ಡ್, ವೆರಿ ಡಿಗ್ನಿಫೈಡ್, ವೆರಿ ಕಮಾಂಡಿಂಗ್. ಆ ಥರದ ಪಾತ್ರನೇ ಅದು. ಆ ಪಾತ್ರವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿ ತುಂಬ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕೈಲಾಸಂ ನಾಟಕಗಳಿಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಬೆಲೆಯನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಂಥವ್ರು. ಮತ್ತು ರವೀಂದ್ರ ಕಲಾಕ್ಷೇತ್ರವನ್ನು ಕಟ್ಟುವ ಒಂದು ಸಮಿತಿ ಇತ್ತು, 1960 ಚಿಲ್ಡ್ರನ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಆ ಸಮಿತಿಯ ಸದಸ್ಯ ಕೂಡ ಆಗಿದ್ದರು ಅವರು. ನಾವು ಮೊನ್ನೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ರವೀಂದ್ರ ಕಲಾಕ್ಷೇತ್ರದ 60ನೇ ವರ್ಷದ ಸಮಾರಂಭವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಯಾರು ಆ ಸಮಿತಿಲಿದ್ದವರು ಬದುಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಹುಡುಕ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು ಸರ್ಕಾರದವರು. ಆಗ ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಒಬ್ಬರು ಸಿಕ್ಕರು. ಶಿ ವಾಸ್ ಇನ್ 80s 90s. ಆವಾಗ ಅವರನ್ನು ಕರೆಸಿ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಸರ್ಕಾರದವರು ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಗೌರವಿಸುವ ಒಂದು ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಹಾಗೆ ಅವತ್ತಿನಿಂದ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಶಿವಾಜಿ ಗಣೇಶನ್ನು, ಗೋರು ರಾಮಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅಯ್ಯಂಗಾರು, ಶಿವರಾಮ್ ಕಾರಂತರು, ಈ ಥರ ದೊಡ್ಡ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಜನ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇದ್ದು ಆ ಒಂದು ರವೀಂದ್ರ ಕಲಾಕ್ಷೇತ್ರವನ್ನು ಕಟ್ಟಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಯಿತು. ಆ ಥರದ ಒಂದು ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಮತ್ತು ರಂಗಭೂಮಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗಬೇಕಾದ ಯಾವುದೇ ಕೆಲಸ ಇದ್ದರೂ ಕೂಡ ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಮುಂದೆ ನಿಂತು ಆ ಕೆಲಸಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿಕೊಳ್ಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಗ್ತಾಯಿತ್ತು. ಹಾಗೆ ಅವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು. ಮತ್ತು ಇನ್ನೊಂದು, ಈ ಕ್ರಾಫ್ಟ್ ಕೌನ್ಸಿಲ್ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ MS ಸತ್ಯು ಅವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ನಮ್ಮ ನಾಟ್ಯ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ಕಥಕ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಕೊರಿಯೋಗ್ರಫಿ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಏನು ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೂ ಕೂಡ ಶಿ ವಾಸ್ ದಿ ಚೇರ್ಮನ್. ಅಲ್ಲಿಯ ಕೆಲಸಗಳಿಗೆ ಬಂದು ನಿಂತು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಡ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು. ಐ ವಾಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಎ ಮೆಂಬರ್ ಆಫ್ ಟೀಚಿಂಗ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕಲ್ಟಿಯಾಗಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾಯಿದ್ದೆ ಆವಾಗಲೂ ಕೂಡ. ಮತ್ತು ಅದ್ರ ಮುಂದೆನೇ ಕ್ರಾಫ್ಟ್ ಕೌನ್ಸಿಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಇತ್ತು, MS ಸತ್ಯು ಅವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಅವರು ನಿಂತು ಕೆಲಸಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು. ಹೀಗೆ ಒಂದು ರೀತಿಯ ಸಾಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಕವಾಗಿ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿತ್ವದ ಮಹಿಳೆಯಾಗಿದ್ದರು ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಅವರು. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅವರನ್ನು ನಾವು ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ನೆನೆಸ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಮತ್ತು ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿ ನೂಪುರದ ಒಂದು ಆರಂಭ ಕಾಲದಿಂದ ಅದನ್ನು ನಿತ್ಯ ನೃತ್ಯ ಆಗ್ಬೋದು, ಬೇರೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೂ ಕೂಡ ಅದ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ದುಡಿದಂಥವರು ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಅವರು. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಅವರು ಆಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಅನೇಕ ಆದರ್ಶಗಳನ್ನು ನಾವು ನಡೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಬೇಕು. ಅವರಿದ್ದರು, ಅವರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು, ಅವರಿಲ್ಲ, ಆದರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಹಾಕಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಆದರ್ಶಗಳನ್ನು, ಅವರು ನಡೆಸಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳನ್ನು ಅದ್ಭುತವಾಗಿ ನಡೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗೋದ್ರ ಮೂಲಕವಾಗಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಗೌರವವನ್ನು ತೋರಿಸ್ಬೋದು ಅಂಥೇಳಿ ನಾನು 2 ಮಾತು ಮುಗಿಸ್ತೀನಿ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
Thank you, Dr. Rajaram. Maya Rao, through her Natya Institute of Kathak and Choreography, not only brought Kathak to Bangalore but to entire South. Alli tanka we had an overdose of Bharatanatyam, Bengaluru nalli. So she was the one who brought it almost on par over time with Bharatanatyam. Vimala, Rangachar and Maya Rao had a very close association, so much so that after Maya Rao's passing, Vimala Rangachar took over the mantle as the chairman. Today we have Maya Rao's daughter Madhu Nataraj, and by saying that she belongs to a much younger generation, she's the youngest speaker too today, but it shows that if Madhu can talk about Vimala Rangachar, not just only because her mother was so close to her, but she has been associated with her, it also tells us about how long the sustaining power of Mrs. Vimala Rangachar herself. Madhu is the director, continues to be the director of Natya Institute. She's one of the ace top dancers in India of contemporary dance who has taken Indian contemporary dance beyond the borders of India. Please say a few words. And before Madhu talks, we will have a small video of Vimala Rangachar made by Natya Institute. And after she talks about it, Manu Srinivasan will read out a beautiful letter written by Revati Satyu, Vimala Rangachar's daughter, for this occasion.
Namaskar. It is indeed a day that is full of beautiful memories, but also a sense of the end of an era. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Shakti Rupena Samstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Auntie was that Shakti, Vimala Auntie, like the Devi, omnipresent, omnipotent, infusing with energy, with Shakti, each one of the initiatives that she birthed. And there were many. Jyothi has particularly asked me to speak about some of the milestone events and also anecdotes, because we already know about all of Auntie's achievements. I remember that my mother, Guru Maya Rao, and Vimala Auntie were friends since they were 8-year-old girls who went to Kamlabai school together. And Auntie would say that she got married at the age of 16, and she would live her dance career vicariously through Ma, because she was not allowed to dance. And she would be in the Rao Hattangadi household every day after college, watching all the rehearsals, etc. Both my mother and Vimla auntie have been mentors, and I have, through osmosis, picked up so many things from them. To multitask, to always be open to tradition and new influences, to be cross-illuminative and collaborative, always work on goodwill, to never back down, and, very importantly, dress up in a nice sari and turn up for a meeting. And, you know, Auntie took on all the beautiful roles, you know, like water. You put it in any pot or a glass or a plate, water finds equilibrium, and Auntie was that. In her roles, in her patras, as a mother, as a sister, as a mentor, a leader, a friend, a visionary, a cultural entrepreneur, she did each one of these impeccably. When my mother passed, I remember I said this to Revati when Vimla auntie passed, that we had to very early in our lives learn to share our mothers with the world. I'm sure, Manu, you know how that feels. And when Ma passed, there were all sorts of people and TV crews, and we were telling them to give us some privacy. Finally, we reached Harish Chandra Ghat, and suddenly one of our Konkani community people came as her body was being taken in, and he said, "Women can't come in." I'd never heard of that before. Vimla auntie was standing next to me. I was holding her hand and taking her inside. She very gently but firmly pushed that man aside, caught hold of my hand, said, "Who told you that? Let's see who stops us." And that was auntie. You could never say no to her. And she would boldly sort of go ahead with every decision. As Jyothi was saying, the golden era of culture in our state, also the 80s, with some fabulous politicians as chief ministers and culture ministers and IAS officers for Kannada and culture who were great. At that same time, Vimla auntie headed the Crafts Council of Karnataka, and my mother was the head of the Sangeet Nritya Academy. And Ma birthed Karnataka's first heritage arts festivals, Pattadakal, Halebeed, and also a precursor for Hampi. What most of us don't know is not only were they fundraising, curating, dealing with star tantrums, they were also handling logistics. I remember my mother and Vimla auntie went to Halebeed, Belur 4 months in advance and looked at every detail, including toilets for the audience and how to build good green rooms for everybody. They both shared a love for the crafts and artisans, the karigar and the folk arts. So every festival would begin with folk artists on stage, not leading the chief guest onto the stage. And the kind of goodwill they built, I think we still see that. When Vimla auntie was about 5 years ago, she approached me, and then about 3 years ago I said yes to, she said, "Will you come on board the MES college board? After me, there is no other woman there. And promise me you'll do 2 things. One, you will always fight for the arts in that boardroom. 2, always stand up for women, you know." And that was, again, auntie. I'd like to just end by saying, because I know that I have the not very desirable sort of portfolio of holding you up before a wonderful performance starts, but to say that I think women like Vimala Rangachar, Maya Rao, Lalita auntie here, I can see Padmini Akka in the audience, all of them taught us the art of reciprocity, that in their granting us their knowledge, their love, we learned also to be nurturers, to be regenerative and creative. I would like to end by saying to Vimala Auntie, the woman who personified grace, glamour, and grit. Auntie, there will be no one like you, and we miss you terribly, but we are so glad you graced us all with your presence. And how? Namaskar.
Arranged programs for Asha and me in Bangalore and in several cities in India. When I left India in 1974 after a long and successful dancing career, I remember the void I created for my parents. The void was to a large extent mitigated by Lalita Srinivasan and the Nupura dance school that she started right next door to my parents' house. The familiar sound of the Nattuangam, the Shodukattus and the bells keeping rhythm once again brought joy into their lives. My mother was enthusiastic to connect with the Srinivasans and was very happy to meet with dancers and artists that came to Nupura. So thank you Nupura and Lalita Srinivasan for keeping the flame lit in my mother's heart and giving continuity to her passion for dance and artists. And thank you Nitya Nritya for acknowledging Amma's work in propagating the arts.
Thank you, Madhu. Thank you, Madhu. Those personal anecdotes and insights were so endearing. And I would like to now ask Lalita Srinivasan to share some of her thoughts with us. Mike is there. And after she talks, if there's anybody in the audience who would like to say a few words about Nupura or Vimala Rangachar or Srinivasan, please come on to the dais, or mics will be given there. They can use that. After she talks, you may please say a few words if anyone has some.
Good evening to all of you. I'm sure we missing him today is, of course, indeed, it's a very deep feeling for all of us, family and Nupura. But he is missing this function. I know is definitely much greater, because I knew his attitude and his organization powers, and he loved running around and doing things. So probably wherever he is, he's missing this function terribly badly. I wish he was here. And mainly, he will be missing his granddaughter's dance, which he was looking forward to her Rangachar so much from past 2 years, but we pushed it off because of her young age. Unfortunately, he's missing that also. He was a great support to me, as all of them have said, and then he was very friendly with the students. Our musicians were very happy traveling with us because he made meticulous arrangements for their stay and taking care of them and chatting with them and helping them to find many supportive things for them, whatever they required or whatever happened to. He was very friendly with all of them, which helped us a lot to build our association. Nupura, on such a function day, he would come in the morning 4 times to the auditorium, see that all the sets were okay, and lighting was okay, and personnel were there, and backup man had come. Everything he used to care for and also think of. And then finally he used to bring me to the auditorium. I was the last one to come always. He used to come 4 times and look after all the arrangements. He was many times he has done the lighting for our shows also. He used to make notes of it and do a very good job of it, in fact. And Nitya Nritya, everything he used to organize so well, so orderly it used to go on, and it was his pleasure to see that everything went off very well. It was pleasure for us to imbibe so much of knowledge and so much of beautiful dancing we could see and all that. For that, Srimati Vimala Rangachar was also responsible. She is my neighbor from past 60 years, and then she was always supportive of all artists mostly. And then she had a great friendship with my guru Venkatlakshama. So she was, whenever she was at my home, Vimla used to come and chat with her and talk to us about the Abhinaya and other aspects of dancing. And also B.V.K. Shastri, who was also had great connections with other artists. Both of them helped us a lot to invite almost everybody in India who has made a name as a dancer. All these things could happen because of such people who stood by us, who supported us and toiled for a long time. Nearly 30 years he organized. Now, of course, the burden has fallen on my daughter Madhu and son-in-law Surdeep, and hope we can do much more work in his stead, and hope we will be as good as he was, though we cannot be absolutely like him or those days when we could organize such wonderful seminars and functions. Thank you, and I'm sure he'll be pleased that we had such a function. In fact, I wanted to honor him in the next Nitya Nritya for being with us, but unfortunately we are paying tribute to him instead. But that's the way of life. Thanks to him that I became a dancer and made my name. Thanks to Nupura, to him for Nupura being built up. Thanks to our family who have stood by us always. Thank you, one and all of you.
I just have one thing to add, Joe, if you don't mind. That while my mother saw the 4 times dad came to see the auditorium, what I saw was that he used to find a nice cozy seat at the back and sleep during the program. Because he had spent all his energies during the day running around, and the 2 hours when she was on stage were his time out. So he would be somewhere, tucked at the back after having gone to Chalukya for a dosa or some pani puri or something like that, and he would be fast asleep. And then she would ask him, Heng Bantu. And his answer to that was, ನೀವು ಸ್ಪಾಟಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವೊಂದು ಇದು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೆ, ನೀವು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿಲ್ಲ, ಆಚೆ ನಿಂತ್ರಿ, ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ಯೂಮ್ ಸರಿಗೆ ಐರನ್ ಮಾಡಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. These kind of inane feedback he would give, and I knew why, but I kept it secret because he was asleep during the program. And Joe also asked us, how did you organize all this when there was no Wi-Fi and, phones, etc.? We had one standard response to that, Higginbothams. Every troupe that came to Bangalore had to stand in front of the Higginbotham stall at the railway station. My dad would turn up there every morning along with Shashi and Chadga, I don't know if they're here, and they would pick up all the troops and drop them back. But the standard for 30 years was any troupe that came to Nitya Nritya had to be stationed at the Higginbotham store in the railway station to be picked up. So obviously we couldn't call, there was no cell phone. So this was a standard thing, and he would be there 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. And any troupe that came to Nitya Nritya was treated like royalty. And it was an amazing experience for all of us. Anybody from Nupura wants to say anything? Because I know a lot of people said they wanted to speak, but we'll keep it short.
No? I think that's good. We can go ahead.
What an apt Shraddhanjali we've had today. A big round of applause once again to our esteemed speakers for so fondly sharing their memories with us. We are deeply honored to have with us today as our chief guest, Sangeetha Kalacharya, Dr. Srimati Nagamani Srinath. Thank you, ma'am, for graciously taking the time to be a part of this special occasion. Please join me in welcoming her to the dais for the inauguration of the Nitya Nritya Dance Conference and Festival. Dr. Srimati Nagamani Srinath is a renowned Carnatic vocalist, musicologist and teacher, honored with the prestigious title of Sangeetha Kalacharya by the Music Academy. A disciple of legends like Ramnath Krishnan and Shyamangudi Srinivas Iyer, she is celebrated for her deep scholarship, emotive performances, and dedication to preserving and propagating Carnatic music. Her artistry beautifully balances tradition and classicism, making her a pivotal figure in nurturing Carnatic music tradition. I now invite all our esteemed guests on stage to kindly join us for the lighting of the lamp to invoke the divine blessings for an auspicious beginning to Nitya Nritya. I would also like to invite Mahi to render an invocation song.
वंदन हे गणपति गजानन वंदन हे सरस्वती सुमिरन वंदन हे गुरुजना सुपूजन वंदन हे शिव पार्वती नंदन वंदन हे गणपति गजानन वंदन हे सरस्वती सुमिरन वंदन हे गुरुजना सुपूजन वंदन हे शिव पार्वती नंदन ब्रह्मा हरि शिव ज्ञान गुण सागर वाणी रमा उमा जगत में सुंदर देवदनु जनर नारी सुरवर भजन पूजन कर जन्म जन्म भर वंदन हे गणपति गजानन वंदन हे सरस्वती सुमिरन. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahi. I would like to request Srimati Nagamani to please say a few words on this occasion.
गुरुभ्यो नमः. सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारंभं करिष्यामि ಸಿದ್ಧಿರ್ಭವತು ಮೇ ಸದಾ. ವೇದಿಕೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಉಪಸ್ಥಿತರಿರುವಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲ ಗೌರವಾನ್ವಿತರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಹಾಗೂ ಸಭಾಂಗಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಸೇರಿರುವಂತಹ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಲಾವಿದರು, ಕಲಾಭಿಮಾನಿಗಳು, ಎಲ್ಲ ಬಂಧುಗಳಿಗೆ ನನ್ನ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ನನ್ನನ್ನಿಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಬರೋಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳಿದಂತಹ, ಬರಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡಂತಹ ಈ ನೂಪುರ ವಿದ್ಯಾಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯ ನಿರ್ದೇಶಕಿ, ರೂವಾರಿ, ಆಧಾರ ಸ್ತಂಭ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಲಲಿತಾ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸನ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಾನು ಹೃದಯಪೂರ್ವಕವಾಗಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರಗಳೊಂದಿಗೆ ವಂದನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ನಾನಿಲ್ಲಿ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಯಿಂದ ಡ್ರೆಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೊರಡಿದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ನನ್ನ ಗಂಡ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಎಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಿದ್ದೀಯಾ? ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದೆ, ಈ ಥರ ಒಂದು ಡ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್ ಫೆಸ್ಟಿವಲ್ ಹಾಗೂ ಕಾನ್ಫರೆನ್ಸು, ಅದರ ಒಂದು ಉದ್ಘಾಟನೆಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ನಿನಗೂ ಡ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್ಗೂ ಏನು ಸಂಬಂಧ? ನಿನ್ನನ್ನು ಯಾಕೆ ಕರೆದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅವರು ಅಂತಂದರು. ಆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಯನ್ನೇ ನಾನೀಗ ಅನು ಹತ್ರ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ. ಬಹುಶಃ ನಾನು ಒಬ್ಬಳೇ ಆಡ್ ಪರ್ಸನ್ ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ. ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಎಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೂ ನೀವು ಸಾಧಕರು, ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ನೃತ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಹಲವಾರು ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಪರಿಶ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಹಾಕಿರುವಂಥವ್ರು ನೀವುಗಳಿಲ್ಲಿದ್ದೀರಾ. ಆದ್ದರಿಂದ ನಮ್ಮ ಯಜಮಾನರು ಕೇಳಿದ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ನನ್ನಲ್ಲೇ ಉದ್ಭವಿಸಿದ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ. ನಾನು ಯಾಕೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನನಗೂ ಅನಿಸಿದೆ. ಆದರೂ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವರ, ಲಲಿತಾ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವರ ಒಂದು ಅಭಿಮಾನ, ಅಕ್ಕರೆಗಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ವಿದ್ಯೆಯಲ್ಲಿ, ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿತ್ವದಲ್ಲಿ, ಸಾಧನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ, ವಯಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ, ಎಲ್ಲವುದರಲ್ಲೂ ಹಿರಿಯರಲ್ಲಿ ಹಿರಿಯರಾದಂತಹ, ನಮ್ಮ ನಾಡು ಕಂಡಂತಹ, ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಹೆಮ್ಮೆ ಪಡುವಂತಹ ಬಹುದೊಡ್ಡ ಕಲಾವಿದೆ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಲಲಿತಾ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸನ್ ಅವರು. ನೃತ್ಯ ಕಲಾವಿದೆಯಾಗಿ, ಗುರುವಾಗಿ, ವಿವಿಧ ನೃತ್ಯದ ಪರಿಕಲ್ಪನೆಯ ಸಂಯೋಜಕಳಾಗಿ, ವಾಟ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಕೊರಿಯೋಗ್ರಫಿ, ಪುಸ್ತಕ ರಚನಾಕಾರಳಾಗಿ, ಸಂಸ್ಥಾಪಕಿಯಾಗಿ, ಸಂಘಟನಾಕಾರಳಾಗಿ ಇವರ ಸಾಧನೆ, ಕೊಡುಗೆ ಈ ಕ್ಷೇತ್ರಕ್ಕೆ ಅಪಾರವಾದದ್ದು ಹಾಗೂ ಶ್ಲಾಘನೀಯವಾದದ್ದು. ಒಂದು ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ, ಒಂದು ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಸುಮಾರು 4-6 ದಶಕಗಳ ಕಾಲ ಆ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತೊಡಗಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋದು, ಎಡೆಬಿಡದೆ ತೊಡಗಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋದು, ಸತತವಾಗಿ ತೊಡಗಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋದು, ಅದನ್ನು ಮುನ್ನಡೆಸಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಸುಲಭವಾದಂತಹ ಕೆಲಸ ಖಂಡಿತ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಈ ನೂಪುರ ಉತ್ಸವದ 30ನೇ ವರ್ಷನ 40ನೇ ವರ್ಷದ ಉದ್ಘಾಟನೆ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಲಲಿತಾ ಅವರು ತುಂಬ ಚಿಕ್ಕವರು ವಯಸ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಕೇವಲ 80ಕ್ಕೂ ಮೀರಿದಂತಹ ವಯಸ್ಸು ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಯಾಕೆ ಅಷ್ಟು ಉತ್ಸಾಹಶಾಲಿಯವರು ಅಂತಂದರೆ, ಅವರಿಗೆ ಕಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಶ್ರದ್ಧೆ, ಭಕ್ತಿ, ಸಾಧನೆ ಅವರನ್ನು ಸದಾ ಹೀಗೆ ಉತ್ಸಾಹದ ಚಿಲುಮೆಯಾಗಿ ಇಟ್ಟಿದೆ ಅನ್ನುವುದು ನನ್ನ ಭಾವನೆ. ತುಂಬ ಜನ ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಇಷ್ಟೊಂದು ವಯಸ್ಸಾದರೂ ನೀವು ಯಾತಕ್ಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಆ್ಯಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದೀರಲ್ಲ, ಹೆಂಗೆ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ಸಂಗೀತ, ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯ, ನೃತ್ಯ, ಹೀಗೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಲಲಿತ ಕಲೆಗಳನ್ನು ಯಾರು ಆಶ್ರಯ ಮಾಡಿ ಅದನ್ನು ಆರಾಧನೆ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಾರೋ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ವಯಸ್ಸೇ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ಮೆಂಟಲಿ ವಿ ಆರ್ ವೆರಿ ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಂಗ್ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸುಸಂಸ್ಕೃತವಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಒಳ್ಳೆಯದನ್ನೇ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆಯೋ ಒಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಭಗವಂತನ ಆರಾಧನೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಆದ್ದರಿಂದ ನಾವು ತುಂಬ ಹೆಲ್ತಿಯಾಗಿರ್ತೀವಿ. ಅದು ಒಂದು ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮಮ್ಮ ಹೇಳೋರು, ದೇಹಕ್ಕೆ ನೀವೇನೇನೋ ವ್ಯಾಯಾಮ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ ಕಂಡ್ರೆ, ಯಾವುದಾದ್ರೂ ಒಂದು ಈ ಕಲೆಯನ್ನು ಆಶ್ರಯ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಅದು ನಿಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಟಾನಿಕ್ಕು ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನು ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತೆ, ದೇಹವನ್ನು ಅದೇ ಕಾಪಾಡಿಕೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಥರದಲ್ಲಿ. ಆ ಥರ ಇದು ಈ ಕಲೆಯ ಆರಾಧನೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಒಂದು ಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಟಾನಿಕ್. ಲಲಿತಾ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸರವರ ಜೀವನ ಶೈಲಿ, ಅವರು ಅವಲಂಬಿಸಿರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಕಲೆ, ಅವರು ನಂಬಿರುವಂತಹ ದೈವ, ಇವೆಲ್ಲವೂ ಅವಿನಾಭಾವದಿಂದ, ಆ ಸಂಬಂಧದಿಂದ ಇರೋದರಿಂದ ಅವರು ಇವತ್ತಿನವರೆಗೂ ಇಷ್ಟು ಚಟುವಟಿಕೆಯಾಗಿ ಈ ಕೆಲಸಗಳನ್ನು ಅವರು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ವಯಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಚಿಕ್ಕವರಾಗಿರೋ ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಚಿಕ್ಕವರು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ವಯಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಚಿಕ್ಕವರಾಗಿದ್ದು ಈ ಕಲಾ ಸಾಧನೆಯ ದಾರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆಯುತ್ತಾ ಇರೋರು ಅಂಥವ್ರಿಗೆ ಅಂತಹ ಹಿರಿಯ ಚೇತನಗಳು ನಮ್ಮಗಳಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾರ್ಗದರ್ಶನ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಅರ್ತಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ನಿಮ್ಮ ನೂಪುರ ಇದು ಪರಿಚಯವನ್ನು ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ನನಗೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ಕೊಡಿ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಲಲಿತಾ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸನ್ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಕೇಳಿದೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪರಿಚಯವೂ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನನಗೆ ಬಯೋಡೇಟಾ ದೊಡ್ಡದಾಗಬೇಕು ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅಂತ ಹಿಂದೆನೂ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೆ. ಒಂದು ಸರಿ ಹೇಳಿದಾಗ ಅಯ್ಯೋ ನಾಗಮಣಿ ಬಯೋಡೇಟಾನೇ ಇಲ್ವಲ್ಲ ನನಗೆ, ನಾನು ಮಾಡೇ ಇಲ್ವಲ್ಲಮ್ಮ ಅಂತ ಅಂದರು. ಇವತ್ತು ನಾನು ಮೊನ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿದಾಗಲೂ ಒಂದು ಸಣ್ಣದಾಗಿ ಕಳಿಸ್ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ, ನಾನು ತುಂಬ ಏನೂ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಳಿಸ್ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ. ನನ್ನ ನೂಪುರ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ಬೇರೆ ಅಲ್ಲ, ನನ್ನ ಬಯೋಡೇಟಾ ಬೇರೆ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ಲವುದೂ ಒಂದೇ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಷ್ಟರ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಶಿ ಹರ್ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಶಿ ಈಸ್ ಎನ್ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ನಾನಿಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಆದರೆ ಇದು ಹೇಳಬಹುದೋ ಬಿಡ್ಬೋದೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಈಗ ತಾನೇ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೆ. ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಅಂಥವ್ರು, ಆಂಟಿ ಅಂಥವ್ರು, ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸನ್ ಸರ್ ಅಂಥವ್ರು, ನನಗೆ ಅವರ ಪರಿಚಯ ಅಷ್ಟಿತ್ತೋ ಇಲ್ಲೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಈಗ ಫೋಟೋ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡೆ, ಓ ಇವ್ರು ನನ್ನ ಕಚೇರಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಬರ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು ತುಂಬ ಅಂತ ಈಗ ನಾನು ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡೆ. ವಿಮಲಾ ರಂಗಾಚಾರ್ ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ತುಂಬ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಒಂದು ಕೆಲವು ದಿವಸಗಳ ಹಿಂದೆ ಕೂಡ ಬಾರೆ ಮನೆಗೆ ಅಂತೆಲ್ಲ ಕರೆದಿದ್ರು, ನಾವು ಬರೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಅದೊಂಥರ ಫೀಸ್ಟ್ ಅವ್ರಗಳ ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಇಂತಹ ಹಿರಿಯ ಕಲಾವಿದರಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟೇಷನ್ನು, ಒಂದು ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟ್ರಿ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋದಂದರೆ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ನಾಚಿಕೆ ಪಟ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿಷಯಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಎಂತಹ ಅದ್ಭುತವಾದ ಕಾರ್ಯವನ್ನು, ಎಂತಹ ಸಾಧನೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿರೋ ಅಂಥವ್ರು ಇದು ಇಲ್ಲವಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋ ವ್ಯಥೆ ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಇದೆ. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಈ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಯಲ್ಲಿ, ಮುಂದಕ್ಕಾದರೂ ಏನು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. ಕಳ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತಿದ್ವಿ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ವಿಷಯಗಳನ್ನು. ವೆಂಕಟಲಕ್ಷ್ಮಣವ್ರನ್ನೂ ನಾನು ನೋಡಿದ್ದೆ. ನಾನು MAಗೆ ಸೇರಿದಾಗ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ವಯಸ್ಸಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಕೂತು ಕಡೆನೇ ಅಭಿನಯ ಮಾಡೋರು. ಅವರದ್ದೊಂದು ಕಣ್ಣಿನ ಒಂದು ನೋಟ, ಕಣ್ಣಿನ ಒಂದು ರೆಪ್ಪೆಯ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ನೂರಾರು ಅರ್ಥಗಳನ್ನು, ನೂರಾರು ಭಾವಗಳನ್ನು ಸ್ಫುರಿಸುವಂತಹ, ಎದ್ದವರೇನು ನಿಂತು ಡ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಆ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ನೋಡಿದ್ದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅಷ್ಟೊತ್ಕಾಲ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ವಯಸ್ಸಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಅಂದರೆ ಅಭಿನಯವೇ ಪ್ರಧಾನವಾದಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಶೈಲಿ, ಮೈಸೂರು ಶೈಲಿ. ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟ್ರಿ ಇದೆಯಾ ಅನ್ನೋದಾದರೆ ಇಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ. ಆ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸ್ಕೂಲು, ಅದೊಂದು ಮೈಸೂರು ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಡ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್ ಅದು. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಂತಹ ಲಲಿತಾ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸನ್ನವರ ಕೊಡುಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಅಪಾರವಾದಂಥದ್ದು. ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡದೇ ಇದ್ರೂ ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾವೇ ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಬೇಗ ಇಂಥ ಹಿರಿಯರದ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟ್ರಿ ತೆಗಿಬೇಕು ಎಲ್ಲವುದರ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅದನ್ನು ನಿಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಕಳಿಕಳಿಯಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ನಾನು ಇದಷ್ಟು ನೀನು ಯಾಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟೆಲ್ಲ ಡ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಬೇಡಿ. ನಾನು ಒಂದಿಷ್ಟು ದಿವಸ ಕಲ್ತಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ತುಂಬ ಕಷ್ಟವಾದ ವಿದ್ಯೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯವೂ ಇದೆ, ಸಂಗೀತವೂ ಇದೆ, ನೃತ್ಯವೂ ಇದೆ, ನಾಟಕವೂ ಇದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲವೂ ಇದ್ದಂಥ ಒಂದು ಸಂಕೀರ್ಣವಾದಂತಹ, ಬಹು ಕಷ್ಟವಾದಂತಹ, ಶ್ರೇಷ್ಠವಾದಂತಹ ಕಲೆ. ಇಂತಹ ಕಲೆಯನ್ನು ಸುಮಾರು 70-80 ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಆರಾಧನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಬಂದಿರುವಂತಹ, ಸೇವೆ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಲಲಿತಾ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸನ್ನವರಿಗೆ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಅವಾರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ಬರಬೇಕು. ಯೋ ಬಿಡಿ, ಏನು ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ಮ ಸೇವೆ ನಾವು ಮಾಡೋದು ಅಂತ ಅವರು ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಕೂಡ ನೆನ್ನೆ ಕೂಡ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ರು. ಹಾಗಲ್ಲ, ಬರಬೇಕು. ಈ ವಿಷಯದಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಜಾರಾಮ್ ನಾವು ಕೂಡ ಮಾತಾಡ್ಕೋತಾ ಇರ್ತೀವಿ. ಸೊ ಬರಬೇಕು. ದೊಡ್ಡ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸೆಂಟ್ರಲ್ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟಿನ ಅವಾರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಬರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನಾವಿಲ್ಲಿ ಆಸೆ ಪಡ್ತಾ, ಈ ಗುರುವಿನ ಕೀರ್ತಿಯನ್ನು, ಅವರ ಶೈಲಿಯನ್ನು, ನೀವು ಈ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯನ್ನು, ಅವರು ಪ್ರಪಂಚದಾದ್ಯಂತ ಅವರ ಶಿಷ್ಯರನ್ನು ಹುಟ್ಟು ಹಾಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆ ಶಿಷ್ಯ ಪರಿವಾರ ಮುಂದುವರಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ, ನನ್ನನ್ನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬರ್ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ಲಲಿತಾ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಮತ್ತು ಅವರ ಟೀಮ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ನಾನಲ್ಲಿ ವಂದನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಅರ್ಪಿಸ್ತಾ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಎಲ್ಲರ ಜೊತೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಜೊತೆ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಸದಾವಕಾಶ ನೀವು ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ತುಂಬ ಸಂತೋಷ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ನನ್ನ ಹೃದಯಪೂರ್ವಕ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ನನ್ನ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಮುಗಿಸ್ತೀನಿ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your kind words with us. I would like to request Srimati Madhokar, a senior student of Nupura and the principal of the Bhavan's Akademi in Nagpur, to present a token of our deep gratitude to all our esteemed guests today. Dr. Srimati Nagamani Srinath, Srimati Jyothi Raghuram, for beautifully convening the SHRADDHANJALI program today. To our esteemed speakers of the day, Dr. V.K. Aatre, Dr. V.K. Aatre, Shri H.N. Suresh, Shri B.V. Rajaram, and Srimati Madhu Nataraj. We would also like to present a token of our appreciation to Snigdha and Mahi for their invocation, dance and song. Snigdha Surdeep. I would like to sincerely once again thank all our esteemed guests on stage for taking the time to be with us. I kindly request you all to please take your places in the audience. On behalf of Nupura, we would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to all our donors, sponsors and partners for their invaluable support and encouragement towards Nitya Nritya. The Infosys Foundation Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan Cultural Outreach Program, Shri Jairam Ramesh, Shri Dayanand Pai Endowment, Srimati Kamalamma Endowment, Srimati and Shri Puvada Sheshagiri Rao Endowment, Construction Solutions, Shri Prashant Shastri, Srimati Rashmi Rajshekar, Srimati Suma Aital, Srimati Saumya Gopalan, and Srimati Haripriya.